Have you ever met someone who you're almost positive is a psychopath, sociopath, and what tipped you off? During a psychiatry class in med school, our professor interviewed a 10 or 11-year-old boy in front of us, just asking general questions about his life and not really alluding to his disease. The kid was very cheerful and scrappy and described a lot of hardships matter-of-factly, along with the fact that he got many of the kids in his neighborhood to follow him around and sort of worship him. He also mentioned that he hunted squirrels and skinned them for food. But this isn't necessarily out of the ordinary here in Minnesota. After he left, many of the students reacted to him positively, saying he was very articulate and aware of his situation. They seemed to find him endearing. Then the professor revealed that the kid had been institutionalized repeatedly for violent behavior, including attacking one of his teachers with a baseball bat. I read the part about him being a self-described cult leader as a huge red flag. Yup, my dear old dad. He used to beat my mom unconscious, and when she was in the hospital, he would tell me quite convincingly she was at work. I one time heard them arguing, and when I asked him about it later, he got very sullen and said that she had been yelling at him all day, and he didn't quite know what he was doing wrong. He got more and more convincing, and refused to even look at her the wrong way with anyone around. It got to the point where I started wondering if he even really was hurting her, or if she was doing it herself to blame him. Yes, it's a fricked up thing to think, but this guy was that convincing. Before long, I started to walk in on the aftermath of some of their fights, and realized he was lying the whole time. He was arrested and court-ordered to attend anger management, which he completed with top marks, only to drive home and continue the abuse. A few months later, my mom left him, and he's been slowly unraveling ever since. I would go on to find out this guy wet the bed until he was 12, liked to shoot his dog with BB guns, never socialized at school, except with my mom, and doesn't remember large parts of his childhood. He has thousands out in unpaid loans right now, lives in a hotel room, and believes he's moving to Florida in a few months. Despite having no money, he's also outwardly very nice and charming, one of the most intelligent people I know, and has been promoted to a top place at his office. Honestly, I've tried to cut him out of my life as much as possible. Seeing him acting so nice and sweet, and trying to foster a connection with me over the things we used to do together fricks with my pish a bit, so I try not to go there. It's absolutely wild how convincing he could be though, how effortlessly he pulled off his lies, and how believable he was. Scary stuff. How tragic to have a parent like this. Sadly enough, my sister is a sociopath. We no longer speak because it's impossible to have a relationship with her. She's a compulsive liar and is always sick with something. She's also a master manipulator. What was nice for me growing up was learning how people manipulate, and now as an adult I can see it from miles away in others. Guy in my English class last term freaking microwaved his roommate's pet mouse because he didn't like it, then turned in an essay on how it was the most efficient method of disposal. Still makes me sick thinking about it. I know, it's freaking sick how some people write essays on erroneous subjects. I can categorically state that microwaving is not the most efficient method of disposing of a mouse. That fact that it is reliant on the house mains is a dead giveaway. I doubt he qualified for a mental disorder, but in high school I knew a guy that had his entire plan to kill his parents mapped out perfectly. It was so good that when he was explaining it he free-handed a map of his house with all the relevant points, explaining entrance and exit, weapons, etc etc. It should be noted that he grew up to be a lobbyist. My girlfriend's mother, she only loves her daughters when it is convenient for her. She torments her daughters to the point where one has an eating disorder and the other resents her and cries about her almost on a daily basis. The sickest part is that they still fall into her traps because the mother shows affection and then turns when she finally gains your trust. I've seen similar things happen firsthand. It can truly mess up a person's sense of self-worth and independence. Be a good boyfriend to her, PLZ. Said it before, and I'll say it again. Through my work with screwed up kids, that is young offenders in prison, I have learned this: cruelty toward animals is always a part of the history of people who turn out to be socio or psychopaths. You see a kid torturing an animal, it is reason to be very concerned. My friend's little brother is going to be freaking psychotic. He's 4 now, and since he was 2, he learned to talk very early. He has told us he's going to chop us up and put us in the trash. He beats the crap out of the dogs, makes candy canes sharp and says I'm going to make your neck bleed with this, takes baby dolls and pretends to torture them. He has had a horrible life already because his parents suck. I feel bad and try to help whenever I can. Oh, and when I saw him tearing legs off of a daddy long leg, I asked why he was doing it and he said it probably really hurts and I can't get in trouble. Freaking heck, get that kid into care. That last part was messed up, man. Simple rule for me, watch how friends, colleagues, people treat others, especially those not important to them. If they treat other people poorly, they will with you someday, when you're no longer important to them. Former employer of 75 people here, some of whom were close friends, and some of whom partnered with me in other ventures, and took over the company, tossed me out, and milked it dry. If they treat waiters poorly, pass traffic in the turn lane, take glee in ripping off future shop for $100, etc., they'll turn on you in a heartbeat if it looks like it's to their advantage. If you find yourself dissing someone and your friend downplays it and defends them, maybe there's someone you can rely upon a bit, too. It can help you figure out buttholes but not necessarily psychopaths. Oh, I have a good one. 10 years ago my uncle developed an aggressive case of me's. My aunt took advantage of this by building a new home that my uncle could hardly afford and purchasing toys for their children such as dirt bikes and four-wheelers. She then managed to round up most of his savings and left him. He basically lived in a wheelchair for a few years while my mom took care of him until he died 5 years ago. Oh, I should also mention that my aunt is now on her 5th marriage, 6th engagement. Freaking C-rag. As my high school job I was a karate instructor. I was head instructor of the 4 and 5-year-old program and had a lot I experience with little kids and the sometimes strange things that come out of their mouths. I had made my peace with the fact that their social filters were still developing and nothing they said was really that odd. Except for one. We'll call him Billy for the sake of anonymity. Billy was a very aggressive kid. I am talking very aggressive. Much more so than your average young karate student. He had several instances of acting out violently toward other students in class, and on one occasion towards me. If there is one thing you do not do in a karate school, it is attack your sensei, teacher. All of these instances aside, it is what Billy said that really made me notice his sociopathic tendencies. No matter what we were discussing in class, he would link it to death. He would talk about killing things all the time, to the point where I brought it up to the other instructors and they said they had noticed it too. This kid was 5 years old and was absolutely fascinated with death and killing of any kind. I'm no specialist. Well, not yet anyway. Going to school for psychology though, but this seems like pretty abnormal behavior for a 5-year-old if you ask me. To this day I have not forgotten his name because years from now when his mass murder spree is stopped and he is caught, I want to be able to say to myself I called it. My friend's ex tried to choke him with a chain when he broke it off with her. Also, her family had a history of mental health problems, and her dad had tried to kill himself several times. When she was about 13-14, he went out into the street, threw petrol over himself, and ignited himself. She just stood there, watching from the window. Old housemate. He would fake all serious emotion. It was like as easy as wearing a mask for him. When he tried to manipulate someone into doing something and he realized it wasn't going to work, he would take the mask off and put on another one like it was the easiest thing in the world for him. That's when I figured it all out and the last 2 years finally made sense. He tried to tell me once that he was a bad person and such, all serious like. I brushed it off saying that he was fine, that it was just depression or something. Looking back, now I realize that is the time I figured out that BS niceness is not actually helpful and that you need to actually apply critical thought to things that come up in life. He was trying to reach out to me, but I thought the best thing to do was to be nice and reassuring. Never again will I be nice for the sake of being nice unless it is truly the most accurate response, or the safest response for my own welfare. When some says they are a bad person, take it seriously. They are trying to warn you. I saw a documentary once on BBC One about psychopaths. It basically said that they are good at getting on with people, but don't feel much emotion. This means that they are just as likely to be a murderer as they are to be your boss. It then went on to say that a lot of people high up in companies, not CEOs, but managers were psychopaths. They are good at brown-nosing and making people feel good, but they actually don't give a crap. They are good at brown-nosing and making people feel good, but they actually don't give a crap. That describes almost everyone I've ever worked with. This dude in our travel group was a bit weird. He kept mostly to himself and didn't bother anyone. He had the occasional angry look on his face, but seemed quite harmless, as didn't told much about his background. We were joking he was a serial killer on the run. This one day we were camping out in the desert. I was done with setting up my tent and walked over the campfire. It was a cold night, so I wanted to warm myself at the fire. I found this guy sitting alone next to the campfire, slowly poking the blocks of wood in the fire. He didn't notice me standing behind him. I could hear him mutter to himself, "I must not hurt them. I must not hurt them." I didn't sleep that well that night. He's not a psychopath, but has another mental illness. Yes, he had other diagnoses as well, but I didn't know about most of them at the time. His general cruelty and disregard for others was a bit of red flag, but when he killed a person in front of me it was a pretty big tip-off. This may not account for much considering it's a we met online story, but here goes. I was 17 or so at the time and met a really nice guy online, off of some dating website. He was going to take me to prom, blah de blah de blah. Nice guy. We'd talk on the phone often and became pretty close. He introduced me to his sister, whom I talked to off and on over the next few years. I noticed they typed similarly and had the same sense of humor. I always felt a bit funny about that but never dug deeper. Cut to 10 years later, and one night I'm a little drunk and I'm cruising Facebook, looking at his profile and her profile as well, looking for clues, because it still bothered me. Both their pages were fishy. In all photos they have no friends tagged, no one comments on their pics at all. None of their friends are workmates either. I see a girl that had commented recently on the guy's page and decide to contact her, ask her some general questions about the guy and apologize for being intrusive. She gets mad at first, but then starts to investigate. Turns out the sister and the brother are the same person. Go figure, and not who they said they were. She works with lawyers and government officials and is currently investigating the situation. She said they were about to meet up next month in person. Hopefully. I saved her from a psychopath. Gotta give him props. She kept up the facade for about 10 years with me. She works with lawyers and government officials and is currently investigating the situation. You tripped the alt account. Change address now. Yes, I believe my current boyfriend is a sociopath. Many things have tipped me off. His lack of sympathy for others, likes being by himself a lot, and so on. But was never really sure. What's really made me think so is that he had this pet cat. The cat was mostly an outdoors cat. It stayed in the garage. While in the garage my boyfriend would always pet the cat, hold him, feed him, and whatnot. Nothing overly affectionate but still affectionate to an extent. Just the other day my boyfriend saw that the cat had used the bed of his new truck as a litter box. My boyfriend put the cat outside, got his gun, and shot the cat. Don't know about you, but this is not normal to me. I began to cry, of course. My boyfriend didn't care at all. Not 1 ounce of remorse. Still kind of shocked by the whole thing. I've never been in a relationship like this and I'm not sure how to go about things. Part of me is frightened that if he could do something like this to an animal, what's stopping him from doing it to me? On the other hand, I can't see him ever physically hurting a human being. I'm somewhat stuck between a rock and a hard place in this situation. Reason being, I'm 6 months pregnant with his child. TLDR. Boyfriend shot and killed his cat. This girl I know is totally crazy. She's 25 years old, dating a 55-year-old strip club owner, and befriends other girls briefly only to victimize and bully them. Once she invited my friends out for a birthday night out. They went out of obligation and the need to avoid social drama, and in the taxi rank some random drunk guy got into an argument with her, to which she proceeded to take off her high-heeled shoe and slam it into the side of his head. The heel dug right in and blood started spurting out. My friends ran for it because they didn't know what to do. Not a small tip-off. They could have helped a guy out and called the cops. Seriously, if someone did that to you and witnesses ran away, how would like it? A kid I went to school with used to like to spoil other people's games on the playground. I've heard it said that he once stated wanting to kill another human as an ambition, but maybe he was just jesting. My husband is a sociopath. What led me on? He told me, yes, he has been formally diagnosed. No, he's not on medication. No, he doesn't kill animals. Yes, he does have a lot of the classic traits of being a sociopath, but he is amazing at overcoming them, and anyone who met him would never guess he's a sociopath. Aside from certain medical professionals, I assume. I have absolutely no reason to believe he's ever lied to me. There are certain things about his past that he can't tell me, having been in the military, but that's not lying. He is an amazing man, and I love him dearly. 4. A student in an interpersonal communications class who sucked at the empathize with other people thing, and announced in one class that he never felt grief, just bored, happy or pee off. Hallmarks of a sociopath. A stripper dom friend of mine, who openly admits to having no shame or empathy, enjoys others' pain but does not understand it, laughed as she watched her house burn down after a party. The booze and drugs may have contributing to her laughing, and her claiming to be a sociopath. Lucky me, I am in her collection of people she considers mine, so I'm safe. A guy I met at an illegal S&M club in New England some years ago. He had 3 female sub-slaves. Even thinking about summoning up specifics of that evening makes my stomach turn. I do recall the quote, "I don't have a dog, but if I was going to get a dog, I would of course train it to frick my slaves on command." And seeing 2 of his women visibly shiver. Jason P. from high school. Breaking into houses. I don't see what the big deal is when questioned about torturing and or killing animals. Cutting himself and playing with the blood. In class. It gets you out of algebra class. Worship Satan because it's the only theoretically divine being whose motivations make sense to me. Fun guy. High functioning sociopath here. What tipped me off was that I killed someone during a home invasion, and I experienced no remorse, but I faked it so well that I got sent to therapy. Rather, I enjoyed the act. I viewed it as something of a high stakes challenge. I don't have violent urges or anything, just a total indifference. Lack of empathy, remorse, or pity. A friend pointed it out several years ago and I've since sought help, mainly out of fear that these qualities will manifest in dangerous ways. I believe that this condition was partially inborn, and that while I was young I had enough moral guidance to avoid becoming volatile. I do good things less so because they are good, and more because I have a strange system that I follow, and out of expected reciprocation, I'd expect them to do the same for me. In relationships I tend to be distant and demanding, but it's a thing I'm working on to be better at. My older brother is a full-blown, Clockwork Orange style psychopath. He was kicked out of the Marines for cruelty, and has since been unable to hold a job. When we were kids he'd play a game called Rolling Drunks, where he would go out and beat the crap out of drunk guys walking home from the nearby bar. In addition to that, he'd trap animals in the woods and do strange things with them. I'd shoot animals with my air rifle as a kid, but that was less out of cruelty and more because I saw it as a challenge, and lacked the empathy to feel bad about it. As a person he's characterized by almost total lack of self-control. He's 22 with 2 children, who my parents are trying to get custody of. I'm old, so this story goes back a ways. A guy who lived down the hall from me in my freshman year of college went off the deep end and decided he was Jesus, and was going to raise his grandmother from the dead at her wake. I was a really dumb 17-year-old kid and thought I'd gently inform him that maybe he shouldn't get his hopes up because when they embalm people, they drain all the blood and replace it with formaldehyde, and that might be pretty hard to come back from. The guy decided I was Satan. After he didn't raise grandma from the dead, he decided it's because Satan, me, prevented him. He came after me with a hatchet while I was watching a baseball game on TV. I escaped without injury and he then chopped a hole in somebody else's bedroom door. Eventually he got picked up by the cops and spent years in a psychiatric hospital. Started working for an investment bank in Australia. The manager has a team of about 8. He puts everybody down, including myself. Several times he chews me out about something, and when we investigate further it was always his doing. The kicker was a team lunch. We were all at a table in a restaurant. Nobody dared say anything except the most senior team member. Only the manager and the senior team member said anything the whole lunch. That just wasn't normal. I'm in Australia too. HR is pretty powerful and effective at most large corporations here. I would consider filing some kind of report with them. Yours alone may not be enough, but if they have had others, and they're itching to axe him, it may help. How many people here are sociopaths posting about a sociopath they know to get off on the power of fooling people? Also, doesn't it take a stupid sociopath to do something so obvious and out of social norms like most of the posts here? I imagine most sociopaths, once they get past the teen years, are very hard to detect since they've spent their whole lives learning that it's something they need to hide. Without a conscience to slow them down, I imagine they're very efficient at this. There's a difference between a hateful person and a psychopath. The former probably will describe the guy you are talking about. I can only imagine the psychopath not giving a crap about your situation, unless ruining your relationship brought something to him. Psychopaths are capable of incomprehensible acts of villainy, but not random ones. That said, what a freaking butthole. I hope he gets hurt. I did meet a guy in a backpackers in Germany. I met him at the bar in the hostel, and he goes, "See those girls there you like?" And I am like, "Yeah sure," and he goes, "They were in my dorm room, but they found the camera I set up and I got kicked out." He then proceeded to follow me to my table with my friends and told us how he studied chemical engineering and had been offered 10,000 euros to build a bomb for some Muslim extremists and said he was contemplating doing it. We politely excused ourselves and left. After reading through the responses here, I noticed that there seems to be some misinformation floating around about psychosociopaths. Slight disclaimer, since I only have a minor in psychology, my info is from a professor I had that did forensic psychology, evaluating suspects for trial and convicts for prison placement for the county, and had a family psychology practice. He had an odd tendency to endear himself with psychopaths, even Manson. Seriously, he got mail from a bunch of the psychopaths he has worked with. Sociopath is the old name for psychopath. Psychopath, much like insanity, is not in the DSM-IV and is primarily used in legal proceedings. There is some hope, however, that psychopath could end up in future versions of the DSM. All psychopaths have antisocial personality disorder, but not all people with antisocial personality disorder are psychopaths. Psychopaths do not understand emotions, but are good at faking them. A good way to pee off a psychopath is to deeply question and discuss their emotions. Psychopaths do not get better with therapy or treatment. They learn more about human behavior and how to better manipulate people, thus making them worse. They are the only known group that can fool personality or diagnostic tests, and it's not understood how exactly they manage that. There is a psychopath test that is used as a diagnostic tool, and the book by the same name is supposed to be a decent overview. There is some disagreement on the validity of the test, mostly because psychopath is not in the DSM. The number one advice we got in that class on recognizing psychopaths is to go with your instincts. You will feel that something is wrong or missing about a psychopath, but they tend to be so charismatic that you persuade yourself ignore your gut. JJ Faucher's example sounds like the template for a psychopath. Also, those who have mentioned high-ranking executives are right. TLDR. Psychopathy is not in the industry's diagnostic manual. Psychopaths are charismatic and dangerous, so trust your instincts when you feel something is wrong about a person. A kid in our backwoods neighborhood was kind of loony, but I didn't learn his true crazy potential until he showed me his tree fort in the woods. He had over 15 Barbie dolls hanging from nooses around the fort. I assume it was like a warning to intruders. Oh, and then he threw a hatchet at my feet. I left. There was a kid at my school who tried to stab a boy with play scissors and tried to strangle a girl. He had autism, so the only punishment he got was a few detentions. He once asked me if it was okay to murder someone as long as no one found out about it. My brother. The biggest tip-off was when he shattered my other brother's eye socket, but he's had anger issues for years. He also lies all the time and seems to fully believe his own lies. He really enjoys causing pain and absolutely has to push every boundary. He doesn't care if his behavior hurts himself, just so long as his urges are satisfied. For instance, He once punched me while I was driving him home from the bar because I told him not to lean on the gear shift while he was drunk. He punched the driver of a moving car that he was in. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.